So, welcome back to the podcast Couple in Focus. And we got Michael Preston here, and of course, me, Thomas Westenholz. We are back this week, and we're going to dive into something that I think a lot of couples can relate to. I would say close to 100% probably have experienced this at some
hmm
point in their dynamic. And we're basically going to be talking about desire and a drop off of desire in long term relationships and this really difficult challenge that I guess we're all facing, right? Where often we meet, it's really exciting, there's often a sexual chemistry, and then somehow slowly things start to slow down, right?
hmm
And it starts slowing down, and maybe there's disconnections happening and we feel less connected, there's less physical contact, and suddenly it might feel quite difficult to kind of initiate the physical contact because maybe it start feeling quite risky, yeah, to take that move when suddenly it's something that hasn't happened very frequently. So yeah, just want to talk about this topic. We're gonna try and condense it, but yeah, Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this huge, huge issues that most of us experience.
Yeah. It's no pressure on this one, right? This is such a huge topic, right? Because it's a it's an important part of a developing relationship, right? That there's desire in the beginning and there's desire and pursuing as the relationship continues to grow and it shifts, right? And I think that there's a part of it where we don't always want to acknowledge that it shifts. We don't want to acknowledge that it gets um, it gets more difficult as life gets more complex. And we as we get older, growing and leaning into that desire gets more difficult. And getting started is more difficult. It takes longer, right? And then there's a as we stay with one another, the longer we go, usually we start adding things like children, which throw a complete wrench. I mean, utter wrench. If you're a parent out there that's going to allow their kid to come into the room at night and wake them up and get a cuddle in the middle of the night if they need it, that's going to impact your sexual relationship, right? And then there's a really great study that says like the longer you go without a sexual relationship, the easier it is to maintain that. Like it gets easier to live in there, which is really, really sad. It also says the like what having a consistent sexual life makes it easier to stay in that sexual life
Yeah.
with one another. And so they both feed
Yes.
itself, right? So we know that. And so we know then that's why it's so important. Why is it so important to have that desire? How do we maintain that desire? And I think part of that dynamic that happens when couples are no longer able to hold conversations about simple things. Right? And we talk about that a lot on this show. And you might be thinking we're going to pound the same drum, but in many ways, it's so connected because if I can't talk to you about my day, if that causes a fight, how are we going to find a way to feel connected and feel desirous of each other,
Yeah.
right? And so because then we can't talk about important things if we can't talk about simple things.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's important, these things you said, because kind of what I was seeing as you were talking about it is two different paths that we can kind of talk about both of them. There are different reasons for why we might get to this place. One of them you mentioned earlier, which is the overwhelm. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
simply overwhelm of everything we have to do, the kids, the work, and suddenly we just feel, and again, we get older, all these things, suddenly the organism is just, there's no capacity anymore to feel in a
Yeah.
place of
I
relaxation
don't want to
and
admit it, Thomas. I'm like, everybody has known me my whole life. Part of my identity has been around. That dude's just an energizer bunny. Like he's just
yes,
going and going and going. And I never want
yes,
to admit, like, I feel like I'm slowing down in some days. Like
yeah,
I don't like it because it's wrapped up in my part of my identity,
yes,
but it's true. I mean, anybody that's listening that knows me personally will be like, oh, that guy's slowing down. Like I've always been high energy,
yeah,
but I get tired. And sometimes
yes.
I want to go to bed at 9.
That's
And
it. That's it.
That's weird. And
That's it.
I don't like it.
But the reason I'm saying that there are two distinct different parts is that the overwhelmed and I'm getting
Mm,
exhausted and I don't really have much energy and capacity for sex is
yeah.
much easier to solve than the other path, which is that disconnect has built over time and maybe even start a sense of resentment where I don't want my partner to touch me anymore. And these are two
Hmm.
very different paths because
Yeah.
we are overwhelmed. We can look at some practical tools. Maybe we can set some dedicated time aside just for touching each other, right? And etc.
Mm,
etc. But the other one is far more complex. Just giving these practical tools would not really work. They would have
yep.
no impact if we say, oh, maybe you just need half an hour a week to touch each other, right? Because it's
Hmm.
not just about overwhelm. It's based on the fact, and you touched kind of on this at the last bit of what you said, right? Which is you said the same drum is the fact that the emotional disconnect have built because there haven't been responsiveness to the point where I don't feel like being physically close to my partner
That's right.
anymore. And that is a bit more complex to deal with than just we're overwhelmed, we're really tired, maybe we have to cut down and set some time aside, right?
Yeah. So let's start with the lesser of two, right?
Yes.
There's an acknowledgement around life is busy.
Hmm.
Um, life is busy. And I will say life today demands more of us as the rising cost of living across the globe.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more pressure on us,
Yes.
right? And the idea of like what it will take to get my partner in the mood feels like it's going to ask something of me
Mm-hmm.
that I don't always feel like I've got the a big enough bank account to offer, right? And there's a fact, right, that I think part of maintaining desire is an acknowledgement of as we stay together longer. Again, it's not going to be true for every single couple, but for most people, they're going to say, yeah, it's I. It takes more to get into a sexual mode,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's not the first time he's ever touched me or she's ever touched me. It's not doing that thing. We've discussed that early on in this
Yes.
podcast, right? It's not doing the big sparks and all those things, or it's not new. It doesn't have all those things. So it takes effort, right?
Yeah.
And so part of that, I think what um, is if I think when we talk about how do we get some of that energy back?
Yeah.
I'll say this, the challenging thing is maintaining desire. The idea that sex starts at a certain point, like, okay, now I've got to give the energy for the sex energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that.
Yes.
That is hard,
Yeah.
right? Because suddenly, I don't know, the vision I get is someone trying to push a boulder up a hill,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But if we start maybe considering it differently. So if part of that sexual energy, that desire, is walking by my partner in the kitchen and putting my hand on the small of their back
Mm-hmm.
and just chatting and putting my hand there and leaving it there and having a discussion and staying close,
Yes.
right? That just that physical contact is part of the beginning of building that, but it's not like, oh, we have to start here and go to there. It's just this becomes a normal
Yeah.
pattern in our relationship. That physical touch is a part of it, a consistent part of it. And I talk a lot about the importance of non-sexual physical touch. Not every
Yeah.
physical touch has to go to sex,
Yes.
but physical touch is so important to maintaining desire. And I think people even give up on physical touch. Even just walking and holding hands, people give up on that.
That's right. And then the gap, as you said, suddenly become too large to have
That's
to
it.
bridge that
That's what I'm
gap.
saying. Yes, that's a really good point.
It's
Yeah.
like suddenly I have to reach so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
That then it's just like, no, that's too much. And then I give up and don't do it, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
tired. So
Yeah, like the part of it is that physical touch, gentle physical touch, caring physical touch,
yeah.
just a cuddle at the end of the day that doesn't have to go to sex every time,
Yes.
keeps the gap between our emotional, connected, physical
Yeah.
relationship and our sexual relationship much smaller. So the bridge is much easier to make.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice point you make here. I like that actually, and I wasn't thinking about making that point. So that's I think that's a strong
Ah,
one. That's a strong
one
one.
point
That's
for me.
one for Michael. There we go. And then I think, we also talked about the overwhelm. So I guess we're looking at the
Mm,
simple root right now, the simple part of this equation, where it's just overwhelm. And I think
mm.
there's also this part of it should happen spontaneously, because in the
Ah,
beginning it feels like it happens spontaneously because it's new, it's fresh, as you
mm,
said, it's exciting, there's a novelty, right? And
hmm.
the fact is, over time, it doesn't. Yeah, and it doesn't. And if you're already overwhelmed, if the fact is you don't have that novelty factor because you obviously
Hmm.
have known each other for
Right.
20 years, then it doesn't just most of the time happen spontaneously. So if you sit and
Mm,
wait for this moment where we feel, it's actually described as spontaneous arousal versus the slow burn. Yeah, which
hmm.
is more what you were talking about before, right? So if you're waiting for this spontaneous arousal, then often we're going to wait a long, long, long
Right.
time and nothing is going to happen.
That's right.
So the point is also to dedicate time aside to what you were talking about, can also be part of the everyday routine, to simply set time aside where we are just touching each other, and it doesn't have to go to sex. It can, if it does, that's fine, but we
Yeah.
just set time aside where the possibility can even occur,
That's
right?
right.
Because again, if we're just waiting for suddenly feeling aroused, then it's probably not going to happen a lot of the time, right? So I
Yeah.
think setting this dedicated time aside is so critical. And of course, we can also learn a little bit from what worked in the beginning. While we're never going to have the same level of novelty, it is
Mm,
possible to introduce some elements of novelty. So part of this, and we also know, and research have shown this, that couples who talk more about sex tend to have
hmm.
better sex lives. And the
Yep.
reason for that, if we never talk about it, and again, just wait for this spontaneous spark, nothing
Yeah.
really happens. And even our preferences of what we like can completely have changed over time. It might not be the same as when we met anyway, because the body changed, right? A lot of things
Yep.
change, our psychology changed. So often even a part of the turn on can be having conversation about it, because that's
Yes.
connecting in itself, saying, I want to get to know you. I want to
Yep.
understand you. I want to understand how you're changing. Help me understand what, if you ever do have fantasies, what do they look like, right? That
Right.
can be a very intimate thing to share. And in
Yeah.
itself can also sometimes, not always, but sometimes lead to arousal, right? And
Yeah.
you get to know your partner better. So I think there's a critical component in making space to have regular conversations. Not that it has to lead to sex, but still talking about sex, because it's
Yeah.
something that can simply completely fade away, right, into just silence and
Yeah.
nothingness.
Yeah. Like if you have the space in your relationship right now, right? We're on the low road here, right? If you have that kind of space, sit down. I'll say this to the maybe the guys listening in, and maybe not very many guys tune into this one, but maybe send it to your husband to have him listen to it. But sit down, right? Anybody can do this, but sit down at the end of the day, grab your partner's feet, right? And just give it a little foot rub
Mm-hmm.
and ask a question, right? Not a simple question. There's nothing simple about it, but just being able to say something around, hey, what has been making you feel good in our relationship?
Mm-hmm.
What has been helping you lately? And carry that conversation on to, hey, what helps you get in the mood for sex?
Yes.
Right, those two questions can begin a conversation just about what helps you feel safe and secure here, and
Yes.
also what helps you get in the mood. I want to be curious, and my curiosity is a sign that I want to find a way. Because
Yes.
if I know, and you might, maybe your partner doesn't know, but begins to turn, I think what you're naming is so important. Is just, can we begin a conversation in some way about it?
Yes.
And notice I add a little physical touch element in there just to bring our attention again to that I see and cherish you, not only as a physical person, but also as an emotional person who
Yes.
I want to move toward. And so on the low road, what you were saying, what I was saying, I think the way we can kind of package that together, and then we're going to move to the high road, the more
Yes.
difficult road for a minute.
Yes.
But it's this idea of maintaining desire starts with an acknowledgement that that desire will not only feel different on the inside, but it will look different between us as far as how we get to there as our relationship continues. Because if we're still trying to recreate like that idea that it should always be spontaneous and it should always send off sparks, we're never going to get there. So if we don't acknowledge that it will change and has to change, and we have to change with it, then we're just chasing a fantasy.
That's spot on. And Michael, I just have to say I'm getting jealous because you got the thumbs up thing set up on yours.
I see it. I'm like, why are you doing this to me?
I think it's Apple has set it in to respond to gestures, but I don't have that. My settings doesn't give me a thumbs up.
Thankfully, I just turned it off. They built it. Not only did they build it into, there's no way for me to turn it off permanently.
Really?
Like every time you turn your camera on, it's like, oh, you want this on, don't you? I'm like, no, I want to tell you when I want it on. And I've looked, and there's things that people say you could do. No, none of it works. It always just turns back on.
It's so funny. I'm gonna give myself thumbs up. There we go.
It's not funny when I'm in session with a couple and they're in a very intense moment.
Yes.
And I make a gesture that sends off balloons across their screen.
I had that happen once too.
Oh, Apple, don't do it to us. Stop it. Like, take the balloons away.
It was so inappropriate in this sensitive moment. And suddenly it was coming up with thumbs up on this.
Thumbs up.
I was like,
I'm just like, no, don't do it. I've tried to turn it off in Zoom. I've tried to turn it off in Apple, and it never stays permanently off.
So we're giving you an insight into embarrassing therapy moments.
When you work virtually, you got to deal with virtual balloons.
But let's jump over, because you said let's look at the more difficult path, right?
One,
We looked at the more easy one, and the more difficult part, where I think just giving these practical tools of engaging won't necessarily work. I think what we said here
has a big block.
Has a presumption that there's always already some level of emotional connection for that stuff to work, right? If there's a complete disconnect, the stuff we just suggested probably isn't going to work. And if you offer to give your wife a foot massage, she might not even want it. She might just say,
probably doesn't.
Get off my feet. I don't want you to touch me.
Why are you touching me?
Exactly. So then we have to definitely take some step backs and realize that. And I think you touched a little bit on this, because you kind of said, touch frequently, but it's not just about touch. It's really saying that the whole build up to sexuality, to physical intimacy, starts way before the physical act, way before sex. And what often happens is when these moments of connection and attunement has been missed for so long.
Oh no, I'm just thinking, like, could you imagine? Like, people don't walk into a bar and see someone and just go jump. Like, I mean, I'm not saying your wild friend at college never did this, right? I'm saying, everybody gets this. You don't walk up to a woman, you don't walk up to a man at a bar and just start kissing them. That's nobody's doing that.
No.
Everybody acknowledges I have to build some level of rapport, some level of something here. Yes. Maybe for some that is a very small amount, right? Maybe our college days were a bit more free and fast and loose, and that could be a very quick connection. But nobody is just walking. We all accept that there is something I have to do.
Yes.
Right? On some level to build some kind of connection before I just start moving physically towards somebody else. We know that.
That's right. And then add on top of that in some of these dynamics where it has died out, resentment has also built on top of that.
That's right.
So there's always also a block in the way, right? Where this resentment says, actually, I don't even want to be touched. Yeah. And until we're able to kind of work with that resentment, acknowledge the things that have obviously happened and caused this hurt, right? And that we're able to establish the emotional connection, we're unlikely to be able to move on to the physical intimacy, right? Because there's simply something blocking it, which is why what we tend to do, of course, right, when we work with people, or let me speak for myself, maybe you don't do it this way, but if suddenly people present with this and it's clear that there have been clear fractures, right, or there is resentment, then we don't focus on the content of what they're talking about. We would then go to understand, okay, what are these multitude of emotional misattunements that has happened again and again, or maybe it's been
That's
one
right.
big one that has caused this block that makes us unable to move through and get physically close to each other.
That's right. Right. No, I'm not just going to say, okay, well, let's figure out how to have sex. Like, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to say what gets in the way,
Yeah.
right? And what gets in the way is this resentment, this thing that keeps cropping up, right? And I think I'm still like basking in the light of my, like, nobody goes into a bar and starts kissing people, but partners. So when one partner is expecting sex to be the conduit for a connected relationship,
Yes.
right? And the other partner is going, no, that's not, like, in long-term relationships, maintaining that is also maintaining that same sense that we had at the very beginning, that I have to make some kind of connection with this person
Yes.
if we are going to move forward with our evening, right?
Yes.
Even if it's going to be a one-off, I got to make some kind of connection,
Yes.
right? In order for that to be on the table. And maintaining that loving connection, that sexual connection, is an acknowledgement that we got to do something here.
Yes.
But then things do get in the way, right? When the dance around sexuality is, I need sex in order to feel connected, and I need to connect it in order to have sex. When that's the dance we get stuck in, and there's no way around it, right?
Yes.
That's, over time, builds that resentment.
Yes.
And then it becomes impossible to talk about it. And then it becomes impossible to talk about other parts of our relationship. And now we have to peel back some layers, right?
Yes.
Now we have to really peel back, like, okay, what's happening in this relationship that is getting in the way of one or both of you feeling safe enough to move toward each other physically?
Yes.
And it's because all the time in the world can be there, because, people struggle with this after kids are out of the house, right? So it's not necessarily an overwhelm at that point,
Right.
or not enough space or privacy or anything like that.
Yes.
It is a relational problem now, not just an overwhelm problem. And we do have to begin unpacking and peeling back those layers.
That's right. And that's why often when you say there might be one person who gets to connection through the physical and the other one that needs the emotional connection before going to the physical, but we can't push through the route of physical to emotional connection. It doesn't work because we can't make that person push through that, right? So there will always be a block. So we have to come meet them in the emotional needs that they have that haven't been met before that's going to soften up and open them up to want to even be physical, right? So there is no sideways, there is no stepping around that, there is no tricks that we can give you to sidestep the fact that you have to somehow have some level of emotional connection and goodwill towards each other, right? As you said, even with a one-night stand, you need to have some kind of good feelings towards each other.
And everybody accepts that.
Yes.
In the beginning.
Yes. And now it probably becomes even more important, right? Because when we're in a close attachment, feeling that connection becomes even more critical, right? And something that's even harder to sidestep. So this is why, again, that when we get into those dynamics, often what the focus needs to be is on focus. What are these emotional needs that have been missed? And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just that there's been some needs that obviously has been misattuned and missed over the years, right? And trying to understand, what are these needs? How can I now acknowledge that maybe I did miss them and the hurt that it has caused that I missed them? Yeah. And how can I try and figure out a way to be able to now respond to these needs? Maybe be more present with my partner. Maybe every time I came home, I was tired and overwhelmed. So I would just go watch the TV, and my partner felt alone, and eventually they didn't want to be touched anymore, right? How can I acknowledge, oh, maybe you did feel really alone, and maybe I didn't have the capacity to meet you when you needed me to say hello, and you'd been alone all day with the kids. Maybe I did miss that. I'm sorry about that. I tried my best, but I see here that I didn't get that, right? And I wasn't able to do that. And I want to try and do that now. So I'm going to make an effort when I do come home to stop for 2 minutes, even if I'm tired, and just ask you, how are you? How was your day? And in doing that, we can slowly start building that bridge again, little brick by brick, so we can actually reach each other. And when we then do that, then it becomes possible to look at reestablishing that physical connection again.
Absolutely. Right. So this is a bit more of a difficult one, right? Because what you're actually naming is, it doesn't just start with a conversation. It starts with an acknowledgement that we've gotten so far off the road that we were on, that we've got to start acknowledging kind of where we are first.
Yeah.
In order, like, this is like when you're going out and you get lost in the woods.
Yes.
Like you need to figure out, okay, first, the first step in finding your way out of the woods is admitting that you're lost in the woods.
Yeah.
Like saying, okay, I am lost. And that means I'm going to start prioritizing like my necessities. If I can't find my way out of here tonight, I still need food, shelter, and water.
Yes.
But oftentimes people don't make it out of the woods because they're like, oh, it's just around the next turn. It's just around that. Like we're not that far off the course, when they're miles off the course.
Yes.
But they never stopped and said, wait, hold on. I'm lost.
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? What do I need to do now? And it's not different in couples relationships. When you get this far out into the weeds, right? And you kept thinking like, if I just scheduled the date night, or if we could just this one thing, just like there's going to be, and it's not, it's more complex. And part of it is stopping and saying, hey, we're really lost, aren't we?
Yeah.
And we've really lost our connection.
Yes.
And I would like to find a way to see if we can find our way back to a better connected relationship.
Yeah.
And that's going to be difficult. And we may even need help, right?
Yes.
But I mean, people can find their way. When it's really complex, I would say you probably do need help.
Yeah.
But if you can't stop and say, hey, I think we're lost, then I don't think you can find the way out.
Yeah. And I think and I love that, Michael, and I think the acknowledgement that if my partner has shut down that much towards me, it's probably because I hurt them over time. Not necessarily intentional, but sometimes, or a lot of times, good people also hurt other people. It's just part of existence and
right?
being alive, yes. So I think there's also just an acknowledgement that's important of the impact that we had, whether it was intentional or not. And it doesn't mean whether we done the right or the wrong thing. It just means sometimes we weren't able to meet the other person's need. And that for them have been a painful experience, hence why they had to shut down, right?
That's right.
And to some extent, often it's the more avoidant partner that is the one who wants sex at this point, right? And they should actually can understand this, because this is often how they have felt. This is how they got to that place in the first place, right? People didn't respond, and at the end, I had to just shut down to look out for myself. And that's essentially what, to some extent, in the sexual context, has happened to your partner. They've been disappointed so many times and hurt so many times that they have kind of shut down, right? So they have to rebuild that trust again to be able to open up.
That's right. Yeah. So I want to like, there's a phrase that pops in my head whenever you say that, like, good people hurt people. We do have that phrase right in therapy that we say, oh, hurt people. And that's true. But good people, like even the hurt person is a good person. Like good people hurt people. And I said there's two categories of traumas that's always super important for us to deal with. And oftentimes we have to deal with one before the other. But one is we have to deal with the traumas that happened to us. Yeah. And it's so important, right? And whether and we all get hit by trauma, by the way. Some of it we call little T trauma and big T traumas. A friend of mine always said, some of us get hit by a bike, and some of us get hit by a truck, and some of us get hit by a train. Yeah. But we all get hit. And we have to deal with the ways in which we got hit by trauma in our life. That's the trauma that happens to us. The one that's more tricky is we have to deal with the trauma that happens through us. Like we will be someone's trauma. Yeah. Every one of us will. We will cause pain and hurt in people's lives. And it doesn't make us good or bad. And it doesn't make our partner good and us bad, or us good and our partner bad. It's actually just we're all like doing our best in these moments. And it can be true that they can be good. And maybe they can be good and bad at something. Like I can be good, just bad at sharing my emotions. Yes. Like that's fine. I can help you grow a skill, but you are not being able to share. Like if you're not an open book, you're still good. Yeah. It's just, you've had good reasons to keep that book under lock and key. Yes. Right. And so all these pieces, this is why it's the multi-layered high road piece, right? This is the harder one. This is why it requires a little bit more help. And there's not like, hey, try this or do this. But I will say, if you want one piece of advice, it's admit you're lost. And maybe admit that to your partner and say, I feel lost. And I want to find my way back to us, but maybe we need some help.
Yeah.
We've got to stop here because we're going to try and do some shorter episodes to keep y'all not from being all locked in for too long. Thomas, thanks for the conversation, my friend.
I love it. I feel we need to end this with some kind of ad that says, and if you need help, reach out to Michael or Thomas or ...
Yeah, check out. Our links will always be in the comments below.
There we go. But thank you so much. It was a great discussion, and we will see you guys soon.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.